In this video, we will see how we can organize our scene and manage our objects and also use collections, which are basically groups, and how we can create links between objects. So when we need to create the same object in many copies and we want to maintain that link with the original in order to be quicker and faster if we need to modify all of the copies, and also how we can use the relations, which are also called parent-child relations, so that we can link in another form the objects together. So everything runs basically in kind of a hierarchy of let's say groups and subgroups, and it's going to be visible here in the outliner. So this is where we are going to be the most of the time in this lesson. So I'm going to expand it a little bit. We're also going to check out some of the properties down here. So first of all, let's recap briefly how this outliner panel works. So right here we have this hierarchy icon. This represents the outliner, and it's you can change that from the Shift 9 key. And also in the column here you have other like properties, file browser, asset browser. We already know that from previous videos. And we have this spreadsheet and preferences. So basically all this column here of the views is based on data. And in this case, when we talk about the outliner, data here are the objects, the groups, and the relations between them, which is represented here by this little diagram. You can also see that you have a column here for the scripting, and you can see Blender as a Python console, and then a column for the animation and a column for general editors like 3D and UV maps, images, materials, and so on. So everything is well organized, and you can switch from a different view anytime. Now the second one here is about how you're gonna view the outliner itself. So right now we are in the view layer mode. So what we are seeing here, it's basically layers. So we are using layers, view layers. Now you can also use the scene, which is gonna show you a little bit different the objects and the hierarchy. Now in this case I've created 2 additional scenes, so I'm gonna delete them and we're gonna work with those together later. Okay, so right now I'm looking at a simple scene, and also I've created layers which I'm going to delete as well. There you go. And so this is gonna be the main scene and the main view layer. So this is how the hierarchy goes. You have a scene, and then inside that scene you can use different view layers, and you can see that each of these let's say container has different properties down here that you can set. So you can see here, then you have the world, and these are the properties here for the world, and then you have collections and objects. So this is how the overall pyramidal hierarchy of Blender goes. And so this is just another way that you're gonna look to your scene. Now let's go back to the view layer, and now you can see that some of the view layers here are deactivated. So I'm gonna check everything on. So this checkbox here, it's for like, you know, compositing and deciding what you want to see at what time and what not. So it's an additional tool here, which is pretty similar to the view, but this is gonna work with the view. This is gonna work with the view layer. So going from the top to the bottom, we can start to talk about the scene. Now in this case I'm using this scene right here, and I can create copies of the scene, or I can use different scenes inside the same Blender file. So if I click on this little icon, I can create a new one. So if I click new, this is gonna be a totally brand new scene with nothing inside. So for example, let's add a cone here just to differentiate this from the previous. Okay, so let's say that this is another scene. So I can switch rapidly from here, from a scene to another. And you can work simultaneously on more scenes if you want. You can switch from one to the other, depends on your need, it depends what you need to do basically. Now, if you want, you can create a new scene by copying the settings of this one. So you click there, copy settings, which are basically the parameters there. So it's gonna still be an empty scene, but with parameters and settings copied. Now let's delete this, and I'm gonna create a new one, and I'm gonna do a linked copy. Okay, now you can see that when I do a linked copy of the previous scene that I'm in, it's gonna create basically the same exact scene. So if I see here, this is the scene 1, this is scene 2. So let's say that I want to delete this second cone. I'm gonna delete it here with a delete key, and if I go back to the scene 1, you can see that this is just a different, well, kind of a variation from the first. So this one has 1 cone, the other has 2 cones. That's it. Now let's create another copy and do a full copy. So the full copy is gonna get really everything from that scene. It's gonna be like a perfect copy. So from this one here, from the first one, the third is gonna be a perfect copy. And again, let's delete this cone. And if I go back, now I have scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, which are basically identical. So this is just kind of duplicating scenes basically, or create new scenes. Now I'm gonna delete those and go back to my original view layers. Now these are probably more interesting and useful than creating more scenes, because these are like Photoshop or AutoCAD layers, when you can decide what part of the scene you want to use and what part you don't want to use. Now you can see again that I have these checkboxes, and these are useful when you want to activate or deactivate things in scenes. So it's kind of grouping objects by visibility. So instead of going object by object, you have you can set up view layers. So basically different views. Now you can see that these view layers are gonna be visible only when you have a collection, so a group of elements or objects. So first of all, we need to learn how to create and manage collections, and then how to work a little bit more with the view layers. Now you can see that I have created some groups and subgroups, or collection and sub-collections. Now if we select the collection, for example, like I want to select this copy of the table and I want to delete it. So I'm gonna select there and press, well, delete. But this is going to keep the objects and delete the group. So I'm gonna go back, Ctrl Z, select that, right click, and do select objects, and then delete them. So this is gonna delete the objects inside the collection. So be careful here, because these are kind of different objects. You can also click and hold Shift to select and then delete. And this is gonna be the first table that I have created in another video. So I'm just gonna delete here the container, and then we can recreate the group later. Now I created also a group for the people, and again I'm going to delete the group, not the people, and also a group here for the pillars, and I'm gonna delete that group and keep it. And then I have a final group where I have placed the walls and the rest of the set, so I'm gonna delete that as well. Okay, now you can see that without groups, without organizing, well, it's gonna be really difficult at a certain point to distinguish all your objects and manage them, organize them, work with your scene in an appropriate way. This is why we start to organize in folders and subfolders, basically, just like we do in Windows or in Mac, basically. Now think about the desktop full of icons. Well, that's gonna be really confusing and difficult to handle and to manage. So this is why we create folders and subfolders and distribute objects inside by category or by our logic. So I'm gonna select here with the Shift key and the left mouse all these elements which are part of the architecture, and I will create a specific folder for this. So you can see they are selected there, and to create a group, to group them, you have many ways to do it. Now the first thing is you can go in the outliner, at the top right you will find this little icon and create a new collection, and then click and drag those inside the collection, and there it is. You have the first group or first collection. Now if we double click inside, we can give it a name, so we can call this architecture, for example. Okay, and you can see that you have 8 elements inside there. So this is again kind of a overview of the data or objects that are inside there. Okay, now you can see we have the first checkbox, so we can use now this one or this one. Apparently they do the same, but this one again is for the view. This one can be used for the view layer. Now let's create some more, and then we will go back to that. Now again, I'm gonna create a group here for the table. So what I can do, select again the objects for the table. There you go. And then you can also right click. Now when we do right click, you can choose here different options, and if you go down here you see move to collection, and the shortcut keys for that is M. So if you press M or you click on move to collection, you can either create a new collection or assign it to an existing collection, or go here to scene collection. So it's the kind of the generic collection, so it's nothing's gonna happen there basically. So right click, let's move to collection and create a new one, and let's call it table and press OK. And now we have another group, another collection that we can use with 5 elements inside. Now right click and you can rapidly select the objects that are contained inside the group, and if I want, I can move it now everything together. So this is also why it's really helpful to create groups. So another way we can do that is right clicking here and go here to new collection, and this is going to create an empty collection again. Let's call this render people. Okay, and then I will select this tree and assign it like that, just clicking and dragging it again. It's really easy, but well, there is something left here, so I'm gonna click and drag, and there you go. I think I have no. Okay, now